This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Well, hello, welcome along to the Saturday lunchtime show with me, Chris Passey, here on Teachers Talk Radio. It's an absolute pleasure to join you today, and I can't wait for us to be discussing all things art in education with my fantastic guest, Joe Tompkins. So, spend a couple of hours with me this afternoon on Teachers Talk Radio, and let's see if we can't dig up something really interesting together.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Well, good afternoon and welcome. I hope you are all well on what we hope to be not the last day of summer here in the UK. Welcome to all our listeners across the country and possibly worldwide here on Teachers Talk Radio. We are going to be talking with a very special guest shortly all about arts in education. But first of all, a couple of bits of housekeeping, if you like. Please download the Podbean app and you can join in with the conversation. You can message and we can have a bit of a chat, and you might even be able to come on and voice your opinion as well. We are on Twitter, at Teachers Talk Radio. I'm on Twitter at Mr. Chris Passey. And as I've said, it's my absolute pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Welcome if you are listening live, and also if you are listening to us as a podcast. Now, education is at the forefront of all of our minds as teachers, and no more so than when we're thinking about the arts, music, drama, theatre, and any other expressive creativity that we may have within our school settings. And today we're going to be talking about how unique those are as standalone options and how really, really important they are to be integrated across our school system. But before we get started on that, I want to introduce a feature, because I'm going to be here with you weekly on Saturday lunchtimes from 1 till 2:30, and I've got a feature that we're going to have that's called Pupil Voice. And Pupil Voice is going to be some fun anecdotes of really funny things that our young people have said to us during the week. And so here we go. Here's our first.
It's time for Pupil Voice.
So I have a teacher who said, over the next 2 weeks, I'll be running some Twilight revision sessions. And the student said back, but sir, we aren't studying Twilight.
That was Pupil Voice. More next week.
There we are. Nice and simple. If you have any suggestions that you would like to drop in, please download the Podbean app and send in a message now, or you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Chris Passey, and you can send those in. And a big thank you to my beautiful niece, Luna, up in Bradford for recording that wonderful introduction and outro. And listen, we may even get my nephew on next week, but it's really cool. So without further ado, let's bring on my guest for today's show. Joe, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, Joe, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much for joining us today on this show. Joe, you are a drama teacher in Birmingham, and you also a drama teacher at one of Birmingham's biggest theatres as well. How important are the arts in education?
Oh, what a question. Hugely important. Without the arts, I would never have been where I am right now. They're so important holistically for our children, and I'm so excited to talk about them with you today.
Well, first of all, context-wise, I'm in a music specialist school. I'm a very proud deputy head of a music specialist school. Is there a little bit about the context of your setting that is going to inform some of our discussion today around about the equity of the arts and why they're so important?
Oh, absolutely. So I work in Yardley Wood in Birmingham. We are a free school, and we were set up almost 3 years ago now. The context of our students is that we have really high proportion of students with SEND, really high proportion of our students who fit in the pupil premium category, and the arts are so important for them in understanding so many different aspects of their lives.
Of course. So, before we delve into that very specifically, can I ask kind of what led you to specialise in using drama, particularly drama as a tool for education, especially for students with such diverse needs?
Absolutely. So this is the only time I'll talk about myself in this whole thing, but I grew up in poverty. I was very lucky to go to a specialist performing arts school, still a state school, but the best school in the area. And I fell in love with drama. And I know that without drama, I wouldn't have any of the opportunities that I have now, and neither would so many of the students who I went to school with. Drama gave me a voice, and it's so important for me to be able to pass that on to other students who may feel the same way, that they might be trapped in their familial circumstances or have no way out of the situations that they're in.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit more then. So when we were talking about this, when we were planning this together last week, we were talking about the needs of our pupil premium and our SEND and our disadvantaged students. And it's difficult, isn't it? Because the language around those young people is so negative. Disadvantage is such a negative word in the way it feels in the mouth when you say it. And we have phrases in education like the bottom 20%, all this kind of thing. How do you approach drama as being a tool of equity to bring those young people even up to the same entry level standard as young people who don't face those challenges?
So arts education, and I'll talk specifically about drama because that's what I specialise in. It's about the whole child and supporting the development of the whole child, not just academically, but holistically too, thinking about developmental play and creating critical thinkers. And lots of our children have never been to the theatre before. They've never been to see an orchestra perform before or anything like that. And I feel like we're at risk of losing a whole demographic of people with the lack of accessibility within schools at the moment. And it's such an important thing for us to be able to bring equity to those children. I think often we try and quantify, don't we, as teachers? We're told that, data analysis and measure this and measure that, but actually are we trying to measure the immeasurable here, like the benefits that the students have, that the arts have for our students and the communities that they're in and the futures that they will have is so important. We work as a whole staff cohort to try and develop our children. I've done lots of cross-curricular work with Team English, as you know, that might not come as a surprise, Team Drama and Team English, but we've seen real benefits in bridging that gap with our pupil premium and SEND students. If we look at A Midsummer Night's Dream, for example, and in their most recent test, the amount they're able to recall and retain just from studying it also in drama is just so incredible.
There's no way to understate any of that, is there? The impact that your art form can have, as you said, not just as a standalone, but also across multiple different subjects. How easy or difficult have you found that working with other teams within the school to bridge that gap?
I think we're really lucky because we're a new school and we're still relatively small in terms of...
Joe, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Joe, I wonder if you're there. Maybe not. Okay, so
Hello, Chris. Can you hear
let's
me
see
now?
if we can get Joe back.
Hello?
Joe, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
I will. Let's see if Joe's can disconnect and pop back live into our show. As a teacher myself, working with music, particularly through the arts, it's an important and incredibly bridge-building subject, whereby skills that are transferable and important are transferred across the entire curriculum. And I'm going to go to the news now and see if we can sort out what's going on with the tech, but I will be back very, very shortly. And here's the news and a word from our sponsors.
I've always considered myself to be a caring head teacher who acts sensitively to support staff mental health. But what I found increasingly difficult was managing the negative impact on staff mental health when resolving issues related to their employment or daily work. Heartfelt Leadership has been developed by Teachwell Toolkit as a handbook to support head teachers to overcome the challenges of school improvement while supporting staff well-being. We know that difficult conversations can quickly turn into conflict if procedures are not fully transparent, understood and followed. Our handbook takes you through step-by-step processes while maintaining mutual respect, avoiding conflict and finding solutions.
At Bloomsbury Education, we're passionate about supporting teachers with high-quality professional development books from leading experts. Whether you're navigating your first crucial years as an early career teacher or a more experienced teacher looking to refresh your practice or take a step up into leadership, our award-winning books are here to help. We publish practical books to support teaching across primary and secondary, from the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design. Visit the Bloomsbury Education website at bloomsbury.com/education to find out more and use code BLOOMTTR24 to save 20% on all education titles. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
So, Joe, we were chatting about bridging the gap between all of the other curriculum subjects and drama, and whether you'd perhaps come across some difficulties when doing that.
We were, and I was talking about how we're really lucky because we are such a small staff cohort at our school, having only been for 3 years in essence, and we haven't really come across much backlash or culture shifting when it comes to understanding the importance of the arts within our school, and I am fully aware that we are a minority case within this. There are so many schools across Birmingham, and that's the city I'll talk about because that's where I work, where schools aren't offering art subjects at GCSE due to either lack of knowledge around the arts, lack of funding, lack of resources, whatever the situation may be. And as a result, children across our city are missing out because their schools are not as welcoming or accepting of the arts as the school I'm currently in is.
Well, let's unwrap that a little bit, because a lot of our friends are teachers. They're working incredibly hard every day up against huge barriers, a constantly changing and shifting educational environment and atmosphere where every day on the EduTwitter bingo card, there's something else that's being called out as being wrong or good or evil, or, cold calling, I think, is the most recent education dog whistle, as David Dido would call it. It's not necessarily the school's fault that they are not able to embrace the arts as much as perhaps they know they should. Why do you think that is?
I think it's a combination of a few things. I think the way that government is currently treating education, with regards to putting a really big focus on the EBAC, with regards to culture shifting within particularly schools who are quite a bit older. We see that their performing arts departments are drying up or fizzling out. I think it's a combination of a number of things which have led to this shortage of specialist arts provisions within the UK, and it's really sad to see. It's heartbreaking, really. You mentioned earlier that I've started teaching for one of the bigger theatres within our city, and the reason for that is very simple. That there aren't enough schools within the city offering GCSE drama, and Birmingham Arts Schools, who are the umbrella for arts within our city, have set up these programs for GCSE drama and GCSE dance to be taught in theatres and in dance spaces with specialist teachers, because they can see that there's a real shortage of that in our city, which is so sad to see when we think of what a diverse artistic place Birmingham is. And
it's such a shame, isn't it? Because I was looking into some research and some academic papers regarding the efficacy of the arts within education. And we've got papers from, particularly in the US, where a lot of this work is commissioned. The President's Committee on the Arts and the Humanities in 2011. There was the Arts Education Partnership in 1999, National Endowment for the Arts 2012, National Governors Association 2014, and a paper by Deasy et al. In 2002 talking about the critical links between academic and social development to do with the arts. And in Birmingham, hailed often as the second city for its major theatres to be producing GCSE arts packages because the schools aren't able to, really speaks to a massive culture shift that maybe the schools don't have a choice in. Maybe it's something to do with Progress 8. Maybe it's something to do with the EBAC. Maybe there are other forces whereby the true nature and the true benefit and positivity of the arts in education might just be being stifled at a higher level than maybe senior leaders and head teachers are able to try and change. What's one of the things within your setting that you think other schools could perhaps replicate that might not be as time costly?
I think a really easy win for us, for staff to understand the efficacy of the arts, is very simply to work cross-curricularly with a department such as English. And it can feel as though you are not validating your own subject, and you are seeing it as sort of like a step ladder into another subject's success. But actually, if I think about the work that we have done, and it's very quick and easy, as the Year 7 students are learning about A Midsummer Night's Dream in English, they are practically exploring that text in drama. And we know Shakespeare was written to be performed. It was written to be seen. It wasn't written to be read in a classroom. And as a result, our children understand the complexities of that story a lot more than they would do just being sat in that room. And it's a really easy win for us. Another thing that maybe our school hasn't implemented but has been implemented trust-wide is this idea of teacher in role. So we have a lot of primary schools within our trust, and I led some curriculum development training a while back now last year, and I spoke to some primary school teachers or leaders of subjects such as maths. This idea of teacher in role, it's an Augusto Boal technique, and I'm sure you've heard of it, but it's this idea that a teacher would take on a persona within the classroom that gets the children excited about the learning. They want to take part. They want to be part of this story to understand. And it's a really quick win. It's cost effective. It costs you nothing. It's time effective. And it's a way to embed the arts even in scenarios where you don't, say, have a traditional drama department or drama.
Of course, and actually, you mentioned Augusto Boal, the famous Brazilian dramatist. Was it the Theatre of the Oppressed he created?
It is the Theatre of the Oppressed, yeah.
And so why Boal specifically for some of our, perhaps more of our drama teachers out there listening? Why do you think Boal's such a good practitioner to be using when we're talking about kind of bridging the gap between social change and advocacy and the arts?
Well, that was what he was all about. The idea that the audience can change the action on stage, the audience's own experiences can shape what they see. And we're trying to give our pupils a voice for change. We want them to challenge what they experience and what they see on a day-to-day basis, and being able to explore that first in a safe setting such as the drama studio, stopping the action and changing it themselves. Then we can have deeper conversations where we can, think harder, if you want to use that phrase, about how we fit that in with our wider societal ideas and concepts. How do I challenge those beliefs that my parents have? How do I think about the world in a different way? And I think using Boal's techniques, if you use forum theatre, is a really good way to do that. We use it within our drama studios quite a bit, especially with our boys. Actually, they really like stopping what's happening on stage. They like being able to get up and change it, and it's been a really good way to implement that sort of level of feedback into our lessons where normally they would have been passengers or quite
I love that. And as you were just talking about that, listeners, you're going to hear, and he doesn't usually bark. That's my dog, Pablo Escobar, because he's a little dachshund. And despite signs all over the house, there's somebody knocking at the door, which is very, very selfish. He will calm down shortly. You may hear him tap dancing on the floor. Joe, can you talk very specifically now about the specific challenges that you see pupils who are disadvantaged, what challenges they face on a daily basis in your school?
There are so many, but I think that we are still very much, and I'm sure teachers listening, you will agree, we are still very much in this post-COVID apocalypse. For want of a better word, we see how the behaviour decreasing, and I really think that there's a bigger issue here. So I was speaking to an early years educator a couple of weeks ago, and they mentioned that their practice has transitioned from teaching students how to write their own names to now teaching students how to use the toilet, because there was pupils no longer need to be toilet trained before they go to school. That's no longer a requirement, and that's very recent. That's after COVID that was announced. And then we see this backlog, and we see that backlog all the way through to secondary school. The disparity in reading ages from our highest reading age to our lowest reading age is astronomical. And children aren't developing these healthy play habits that we would expect to see from well-socialized children. And as a result, I truly think that's seeping into the behaviour that we're seeing. There are issues up and down the country with spikes in behavioural problems and safeguarding issues due to lack of healthy play. In 2023, there was a survey, and it said that more than 2/3 of staff, so that's 67% of staff who did the survey, reported there was a rapid decline in behaviour since COVID. And they said that passive non-compliance, refusal to learn, ignoring authority figures, and they were causing the biggest issues. Now I think about my context, and I think about the school in which I teach, and I can really see that mirrored in this disadvantaged area, and maybe even heightened. And we go back to this idea that when we are teaching the arts, we're thinking about the whole child. We're thinking holistically about not just their academic development, but also their social development, how they interact with other people, being confident, respectful, articulate learners. And I think that really the biggest challenge right now is that. And there is no quick fix for this change, this shift that needs to happen. But I truly believe that it all comes down to those play habits, the lack of socialization that these children had and suffered with, because they haven't been able to have those healthy relationships with other children their own age. It's been really limiting for them. And then they get put back into education where there are so many children who are their own age, and now they have to work out how to socialize appropriately for their age bracket. And they don't know how to do that because they haven't learned how to.
That's so fascinating, Joe. I mean, just listening to you speak there, you're clearly so passionate and such an advocate for this. So let me perhaps be a little bit mean and throw a bit of devil's advocate at you. Why can't any of these things be taught through any of the other subject and any of our other open bucket subjects? Why can't that compassion and that play, why can't that be taught through history or any of the sciences, the exploration? They're quite creative subjects. Why the arts?
They can be if we use the tools that the arts teach us. If we use teacher in role, if we go back to the idea of Augusta Boal, and we also talk about these things within drama, I think often, and within all art subjects, I think often it can be easy to box drama, art, music into the idea, they just go into a room and they doss around for a bit. But actually, we're having really intellectual conversations about the historical and social impact that this play has, and we're analysing the characters' emotions here, and we're building empathy through that. In arts, they might be looking at a specific time period, and we have to understand the political implications of that before we can truly transform that. And I think if we use the arts as a tool to discuss those other topics further, and within those other topics, if we use tools such as teacher in role, then we have a more harmonious, exciting working environment where the children love to learn. And I feel like so many places that I've visited or stories that I've heard from teachers, the children aren't loving learning right now. So how do we make that happen? And I think this is...
Well, I think that's absolutely fascinating, and such, as I said earlier, such a point of advocacy. We've got a couple of people saying hello on the app. We've got Roya and Anup. Anup is from Nepal, saying first time on this app. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining in and saying hi. If any of our listeners out there want to get involved in the conversation, you can download the Podbean app, follow Teachers Talk Radio, and you can message us directly in the show. And you can perhaps even come on and share your opinions about arts in education, or you can jump over onto Twitter at Mr. Chris Passey or at TTR official, and just TTR Radio official, and come and join in. And also Pablo made his appearance. Listen, he's very passionate about the arts here where we live, and I'm very proud of him for that. But listen, it's real life. Sometimes a dog is going to bark in a house. Joe, listen, one of the things that we were talking about, and to be open to everybody, we've worked with each other for a number of years, and it was really important to me that the first person, the first guest on my show was going to be somebody I could just naturally talk to. And I didn't underestimate your ability to talk in any way, shape or form, because I know you as a person, but your knowledge and your strength of passion for this subject is so keenly felt. Other than kind of your origin story, which you kind of alluded to earlier, are there things that are happening on a daily basis for you in school that are really feeding that passion and that advocacy that you think is worth a bit of a mention?
100%. We do so much every day. I'm really lucky to have a really strong team of creatives alongside me in school. But it's those children who are really struggling and behaviourally, or, with SEMH, and they come into the drama room and they can express themselves. I think that's the thing that keeps me going. We both, Chris, you and I both work in really difficult circumstances sometimes with the children who we are privileged enough to teach. And I think getting glimpses of children who really struggle, but they really enjoy your subject, or really struggle, but then they create something so beautiful with such depth and meaning. Those are the moments that I cling to, and those are the moments that make me want to push forward. I give a quick shout out to Olivia McDonnell, who's currently helping me direct Grease at school, the school's very first musical, and the children are so excited for it.
I love that. Other musicals are available, of course.
Of course.
But listen, I totally agree. We are, all of us, incredibly privileged to be in the position we are to potentially influence positively the lives of the young people in our care. And certainly from a music perspective, some of the young people that I work with and our wonderful staff work with, they light up in a different way when they play an instrument or they sing, or they, the feeling you get when you see a young person who has maybe been a school refuser for some emotional reason, or suffering quite poorly with their social and emotional mental health. And after just a couple of weeks, they decide to get up in front of and sing in front of people. Those moments are where it's very hard to have that in a research paper. It's very hard to have that in hard data. And so what I think is difficult about arts advocacy in terms of parity within the curriculum is that it's only anecdotal, isn't it? We can just tell stories to each other and hope that those stories spread positivity, and actually sometimes that positivity isn't going to turn out in exam results, and we might have to look at success in a different way. And maybe we could talk about that now, Joe. Like in your setting, if success doesn't appear within exam results, which are doubtless incredibly important, what are the signs of success that you have seen anecdotally in your setting and in perhaps your new theatre setting as well, that show you that you're achieving something, progress is happening?
That's a really interesting question. I think as arts teachers,
Thanks.
these are things that we continue to battle with. They are making progress. You can't see that in their books because they don't have books in drama, but you can see that because this student has refused to go into all of their lessons today, but they've come into drama and they've created this beautiful piece of theatre. Would you like to come and watch that? Or year 8 this year, I noticed when they were in year 7, they really struggled with their confidence to speak aloud. So I've created a scheme of work around physical theatre for them in year 8. And I have a child who really struggles with their mental health, who has booked in their mental health intervention specifically to happen during their drama lesson so that they don't have to do drama. But they're refusing to go to their intervention or asking if it can go at a different time so they can stay in the room. They can work with other children. They can create pieces of drama. And seeing those snapshots, and earlier I said that, we're trying to measure the immeasurable. And I think,
Yeah, of course.
Often we are within the arts, because how can you, it's that saying, isn't it? How can you bottle a feeling? How can you bottle the joy that you're giving to children? But our curriculum intent comes back to building confidence, building life skills, building the ability to be able to interact with people appropriately, the resilience to take on feedback and to change your work based on that too. There are so many things within our subject that I don't think that other subjects have the privilege of seeing, or the privilege of fully understanding. But that's the beauty of art subjects.
The ephemeral nature of it, you can't pin it down. What is it? The lyric from The Sound of Music. How do you take a cloud and pin it down? It's difficult.
Other musicals are available.
Other musicals are available, absolutely. Let's look at something that's slightly parallel to this, and your safeguarding role within the school, official or not, and how that seeps in, perhaps because of your role, because you're the drama teacher, that you are having people come to you and maybe disclosing things that they aren't saying to other teachers because they have perhaps more of a pastoral relationship with you, even if that's unofficial. Can you speak to that maybe?
I absolutely can. I think it's really important that we differentiate between the drama teacher and the drama therapist, because I have a real passion for drama therapy, but I am not a drama therapist.
Okay.
And children in our spaces often feel safe to disclose things with us, and feel safe to talk to us about things that they might not have disclosed to other people. Speaking as a teacher or as a human, real quick, you have to ensure that you have a good, strong network of people around you, because often being a drama teacher does feel a little bit like being a therapist. They might not directly disclose something to you, but something will happen in their piece of theatre that they've created that then you disclose. And without wanting to sound like somebody who is trying to be a drama therapist, there's an approach called the Sesame approach within therapy, and that is using storytelling as a way to unpick trauma, using storytelling as a way to understand your emotions and your and what you're feeling. And I think if you come at drama teaching from a trauma-informed approach, then you are able to safely assist children when they inadvertently disclose how they are feeling or what is happening to them. And, you know, they might have other relationships with other children in the school, but we're in a really unique situation as arts teachers, not just drama, music, art, where they feel safe to express themselves in a way that they haven't felt safe to express themselves in a classroom where they've been sat behind a table. And it's a really interesting question that you ask, and I think it's really hard to pinpoint how you feel about that, because obviously as a teacher we all have duty of care, we've all got our safeguarding procedures to follow. As a human, sometimes disclosures can be incredibly tricky, especially if they're happening more frequently than they would to another staff member as well.
Of course, and there's a deep truth there, isn't there? A deep and simple truth that when you have young people who are being asked to search their own selves and their own existence and their own beings, to think about their lived experience, to reflect on it, for some young people, those moments are going to be transformative. They could be upsetting. They could be joyous. How important is it through the arts that teachers are also giving our young people tools of resilience, tools of coping mechanisms, and emotional maturity to be able to deal with those moments where they are perhaps more open and vulnerable than they are in other subjects? Because, as you say, young people in my English class, I do hope I get to an emotional level, if we're talking about maybe the heartbreak within a specific poem, and we can talk about it, but because they're not then getting up and maybe interpreting it through their own body and voice, it's not as visceral and not as direct as it might be in your drama class, for instance.
I said, didn't I, earlier, it's all about giving students who wouldn't necessarily have one a voice, and in order to give them that voice, you also have to give them the tools to be able to put those things away and to carry on with their lives. Things that happened in the past. We can deal with that emotion right now, but it's really important that doesn't seep into how you're actually feeling right now. And that's the idea about being trauma informed and using the correct response to those situations. I think we build resilience from we scaffold resilience. I think I'll use that term. We start by, offering feedback on their work and asking them to then improve their work, and we peer assess every lesson in drama. They also self-assess every lesson and they receive verbal feedback. So those nuggets of resilience, oh, you didn't like that, oh, but you've told me why you didn't like that, and you've given me a tool to change that so that I can improve that next time. And we scaffold that resilience so that when they get to year 9, year 10, year 11 and beyond, when they start looking at these more hard-hitting plays and monologues and things where I'll have to ask them to use Stanislavski's techniques and think about their emotional recall in this, that they have those tools available to them to put those things away. But also, if any new things do come up, if they need to disclose anything, that you're there and you are a safe space for them. Because we know how cruel our industry can be and how cruel our industry has been. I feel like we're in this really exciting place with arts right now where the teachers or the lecturers or whoever they may be are much better at framing, shall we say, their displeasure in performances than they might have been when we were at school or when we were training. And I think it's really important that we are that safe space for these pupils, but that we are scaffolding that resilience, because as anything, it's something that's learned, and they won't fully, I think we're all still really learning how to be resilient now as adults. So how can I expect them to just get over something that's happened? It's a really good question.
Of course. Now, I think we are going to have a word from our amazing sponsors and partners in a listen to some of the week's key educational news. And when we come back, we'll have a chat about maybe the curriculum that you've been doing. So for all of our listeners out there, either listening live or to the podcast, a big thanks to our partners and sponsors. Enjoy the news. Breathe it all in. Any messages you want to send, please download the Podbean app and you can get in touch with us directly or follow us over on Twitter.
I've always considered myself to be a caring head teacher who acts sensitively to support staff mental health. But what I found increasingly difficult was managing the negative impact on staff mental health when resolving issues related to their employment or daily work. Heartfelt Leadership has been developed by Teachwell Toolkit as a handbook to support head teachers to overcome the challenges of school improvement while supporting staff well-being. We know that difficult conversations can quickly turn into conflict if procedures are not fully transparent, understood and followed. Our handbook takes you through step-by-step processes while maintaining mutual respect, avoiding conflict and finding solutions.
At Bloomsbury Education, we're passionate about supporting teachers with high-quality professional development books from leading experts. Whether you're navigating your first crucial years as an early career teacher or a more experienced teacher looking to refresh your practice or take a step up into leadership, our award-winning books are here to help. We publish practical books to support teaching across primary and secondary, from the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design. Visit the Bloomsbury Education website at bloomsbury.com/education to find out more and use code BLOOMTTR24 to save 20% on all education titles. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Multiple media outlets have covered comments made by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak about pro-Palestinian demonstrations which are taking place on university campuses nationwide. Mr Sunak called on university leaders to ensure the safety of all students and highlighted the importance of universities as places where respectful debate flourishes, but called them bastions of tolerance. He went on to criticise a vocal minority who were disrupting the lives and studies of their fellow students. He also said that there were some cases of outright harassment that has to stop. The meeting with university leaders aimed to address the response of higher education institutions to the surge in pro-Palestinian protests, as encampments have appeared on more than a dozen campuses. Education Secretary Gillian Keegan has said that university vice-chancellors need to show leadership over concerns that campuses could become unsafe environments if they go down the route that you see in other places like the US. In recent weeks, TV footage has shown police in the United States break up demonstrations and encampments at universities and colleges across that country. Many images show officers in riot gear and in large numbers. In Scotland, new First Minister John Swinney has been accused of using the same old excuses as he refused to answer a question about whether he would live up to a promise made by the SNP to add an extra 3,500 teachers to the workforce. The Scottish Daily Express reports that Mr Swinney was accused of having a record in education of broken promises. The comments were made by Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross, and Mr Ross went on to highlight cuts to teacher jobs by cash-strapped councils, failing to provide a laptop to every child, and abandoning a bill intended to raise standards. Mr Swinney served as Education Minister from 2016 to 2021. In England, Education Secretary Gillian Keegan has also been on record about the impact parents working from home has had on school attendance. Speaking to The Times, Ms Keegan said that 50,000 more school pupils took absences on Fridays compared to the start of the week, and cited working from home parents who whisk their children out of school on Friday to take them off for long weekend breaks. Ms Keegan said curbing the rise in absences was a top priority, and that data has helped target support for parents and schools. Fines which can be issued to parents have increased from a minimum of £20 to a minimum of £80. The BBC reports that students hoping to start undergraduate courses in 2025 will be able to see the grades that recent successful applicants have achieved at A-level or the equivalent. Universities already publish entry requirements for courses, but they can be flexible and let students in with lower grades. UCAS is making the changes to help students make informed, ambitious choices and to give them confidence in their applications. Applications for undergrad courses for 2025 open on the 14th of May. The new tool should allow students to search a course and see the most recent common grades held by those accepted onto it in previous years. It will also show how many students were offered a place compared with those who applied. Students who get free school meals will also no longer have to pay the £28.50 application fee. Finally, international students in Wales are reported by the BBC as sleeping rough on some university campuses after struggling to find housing close to lectures. A long commute from affordable accommodation has seen some students sleep in 24-hour study spaces to help reduce costs. Universities Wales says it always encourages students facing difficulty to talk to their institution. Nida Ambreen of Bangor University Students' Union said postgrad international students were particularly affected as they often come with families and were not eligible for university housing. According to latest figures, there are 20,920 non-EU international students currently studying in Wales, and the Welsh universities are aiming to increase that number as they can be charged higher fees. Members of the Welsh Senedd have raised the issues repeatedly over the last year, but full details of this story can be found on the BBC News Wales website. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
And a huge thanks to Joe and the team for the weekly news, and a big thanks to our sponsors and our partners. Joe, before the news, we were chatting about all things drama and empowerment and advocacy, and you mentioned about your curriculum. So I wondered if we could delve a little bit into your drama curriculum, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course we can. It's something that I'm really proud of, something that we've built from scratch in essence. So if you're not a drama specialist, you might not know that the drama national curriculum doesn't exist by itself. It exists within the English national curriculum. And as a result, there aren't very many guidelines for us to follow. But as with all curriculum designing, we have to start at the end and work our way backwards to work out what our children need and what they need to know. You and I, Chris, have spoken a lot about concept curriculums over the past few months. I know it's something you're really passionate about as well. The idea that the curriculum can be built thematically in order to ensure that the children are still understanding everything that they need to know. And I think it's a really interesting idea that I'd actually like to develop my curriculum further around. So in essence, they start in year 7 with the basic skills that they need. They come to us with little to no prior knowledge of drama. They haven't studied it in primary school. So often they know nothing. So we start with our basic skills, and we do that through storytelling and through twisted fairy tales. And they learn the skills through the fairy tale in essence. And it's something they really enjoy doing. So that's storytelling, which then leads very nicely into the idea of A Midsummer Night's Dream, a fairy tale into a fairy tale. They've learned about the basic construct of what a fairy tale might look like, and then we dive into the fantastical fairy kingdom for A Midsummer Night's Dream, and we use those basic drama skills transitionally so they can start working with script for the first time. This is the first time they would have touched the script. It's in their second scheme of learning. In year 8, we look at ambition as their theme, as their springboard, as their stimulus, in order to devise using physical theatre as a way to do that. But ambition is our main theme and concept that we work through and from. And then we create aspirational learners without them even realising that we're doing it. It's a really nice scheme of work that really enables them to think big and dream big. What do I want to be? What does ambition look like for me? Which leads into our Year 9 schemes, where we look more at politics and satire and what does the world tell us now. What does that mean for theatre? How can I present that on stage? And we use practitioners such as Brecht to do this. If you're a drama teacher, you'll be not shocked at all that I've just linked Brecht to politics in Year 9. But that leads very nicely into their Year 10 and 11 schemes of learning, thinking more about the historical, social, political implications of the plays that they'll be delving into, looking back to their storytelling from their basic skills in Year 7 that's travelled through with them all the way through Key Stage 3, to help them with their devising from stimulus, which they would have looked at in Year 8 and touched on again in Year 9. So building the curriculum from scratch is always a big challenge, trying to make sure that they understand everything they need to understand and have a real grasp of all of the practitioners that they need to know about by the time they get to GCSE is no mean feat. But we're a new school, so I've had a bit of time to really think about and craft what our Key Stage 3 curriculum looks like. And obviously it's not set in stone. Things change, things shape, things adapt. And each year we're looking at more relevant source materials that we can use and work from, because it's really important that they can see themselves in the art. I think that's a Stanislavski quote there that I've just thrown in.
It's very posh of you.
Very posh of me. But that idea that if they can't see it, they can't be it. So it's really important to us that we're keeping our curriculum as relevant as possible.
And that's a huge thing you've just said there about representation. Particularly, it's 2024. Representation is hugely important. You speak to a lot of young people, and you hear a lot of young people with potentially limited views on what they can achieve in life because they simply don't see themselves succeeding. They don't see themselves out in the public eye. They don't see themselves winning awards for writing. The Olivier Awards just happened, and that links directly back to arts education. I think maybe 3 winners were from the north. I mean, I'm in the Midlands. You're from down London, aren't you, Jo?
I am indeed.
Yeah, you're an Essex girl.
Well, not quite Essex, but.
I mean, Jo, you can say where you're from. We're not.
No,
where are you from?
I'm from Hayes in London. If you know the area, I apologise. But I've moved up to the West Midlands. I live here with my partner Harry. We've been here for 10 years, and I love Birmingham. And I'm really lucky to teach in this area. And
for the lovely people of Hayes, can we just qualify that you're apologising for leaving?
That's 100% what I'm doing, yeah.
But yeah, so these 3 or 4 actors were saying, we're from the north. Thank you to my drama teacher. Thank you for everything you taught me. Thank you for getting me out there. Thank you for the opportunity. And they were really proud that was being recognised. But I guess it's got to be said, hasn't it? The north-south divide is still present. Even last night with the Northern Lights, I think we should have Southern Lights. There's a lack of parity and equity there. Did you catch the Northern Lights last night, Jo, or were you like me and asleep?
Well, no, I did catch them, but I could only see them through my phone camera. I couldn't see them just using my eyes, so it was a little bit disappointing. But what I saw on my camera was beautiful.
Oh, I'm so pleased for you. I'm going to have to wait up tonight to see them. If anyone out there listening, either on the live show or the podcast, you saw the Northern Lights, I hope you had a wonderful time. If you did, download that Podbean app and drop us a message and let us know. Jo,
we Christmased out.
Yes, absolutely. I went to Iceland and saw them, but not here in my own house. Never mind. Jo, we were looking at your curriculum in some depth, looking at concept-led and thematic, and I've been chatting recently on a number of different platforms regarding concept-led curriculum and how much it's influenced my teaching and the curriculum that I co-designed with my head teacher at school for English. I love the idea about ambition. I was chatting the other day, ambition being a great theme to introduce young people to before they hit the text of Macbeth, looking at how blind ambition can destroy, and that ultimate power corrupts, ultimately, that kind of thing. When you have your students in front of you, what does it feel like when they clearly either see themselves represented, as we were just discussing, or they can look back and see how the world has changed through some of the themes that you have been teaching, particularly maybe some of the political angle you were talking about?
It's so important to me. We touched earlier on, where I'm from, and we've just spoken about Hayes. I'll mention him here. Luke Jones, you are a hero. He was my drama teacher growing up, and without him, I wouldn't be here. He introduced us all to such diverse texts that were relevant to us at the time. And I think that's why it's so important that I do that for my children too. It's been so interesting seeing Year 9 with Brecht. I really wasn't sure if they were going to get it. And I really wasn't sure if they were going to understand the satirical nature of it and the politics, and that just because we're turning something into satire doesn't mean that we deem it not important. In fact, the opposite. It means that we want the audiences to question what they're seeing on stage. And they just get it. And it's because we're looking at things like COVID and racism and the patriarchy, and we're looking at articles and video clips that are so relevant to them, that happened this year or last year or the year before, and they can see themselves within it. And they can make the choice about which one of these stimuli they use, and they're choosing the ones that are most relevant to them. And the feeling that I get watching them talk about their own experiences, or what they think the world should change into, just makes you feel so proud. Because you hear so often people or specifically teenagers in working class, low socioeconomic wards, getting such a bad rep for not understanding or not fully grasping the world that they live in. But boy, do they get it. They get it so much more than people give.
Well, absolutely, and that's kind of at your hand, isn't it? You're ensuring that's happening. We touched earlier on in the show about, you mentioned Team English and how you were working with them. What kind of plans have you come up with the English department to ensure that there is a synergy between the two, so that your direct work with drama and the arts with your young people might transfer into better grades and a better understanding of the texts that they're studying in English through language and literature?
It's really interesting that you say that. I'm going to be speaking to our head of English, Lucy, a little bit more about this next week. But the idea of ambition, like you said, was a very conscious choice. Thinking about Macbeth being one of their set texts when they do their GCSEs in years to come, and choosing thematically ideas that they might not yet fully understand, that are going to be translated later on down the line for their GCSEs in either English or drama, is really important. But also, children don't fully understand how to analyse characters or analyse lives of people that don't really exist, and until they have lived those experiences in drama. So even if we think less thematically and more practically, looking at a script and being able to tell me what that character is currently feeling at that point, and how you as an actor would show that through your body language or your facial expression, etc., immediately translates to the English classroom and pulling apart characters in Macbeth or An Inspector Calls. Other playtexts are available. And that idea is just a direct translation from classroom to classroom. I think English and drama do have a synergy between them anyway, because we're looking at stories. And that's something that I think is we go back to easy wins in schools. That's the easiest win of all. If you're a drama teacher and you're trying to validate your subject in a school that might not be hearing, go and talk to Team English, because they get it too.
Yeah, I think that's important. It underlines everything you've said. It frames your existence within the school as having a point. Do you feel like you've had to fight for that, to create that existence as a drama teacher, as a drama practitioner, as you said, a kind of an unofficial therapist, though obviously it pains to point out that you aren't. Have you had to carve that niche out for yourself to make sure that you are protected? You know, have you made yourself indispensable, or has that indispensable nature of your job grown organically?
Sorry, it took me a little bit long to unmute then. I was just thinking about my response. I think it's a mixture of the two. I think as arts practitioners, we do so much outside of the classroom that leads us to having good relationships with the children, because they can see that we really care, because we're putting on these extra clubs, we're doing these extra trips and visits. So they understand that we are there for them, but also working so incredibly hard within the classroom to make sure that those relationships that you've built carry through into a practical space. Teaching in a practical space is truly wild. If you've never taught in a classroom without tables or chairs before, I truly recommend that you give it a go and just see. I think that we've as a team worked hard to try and make ourselves indispensable. But also I do think it's something that grows naturally through the process of children feeling as though your room is a safe space. You do not judge them for what they might be going through or have gone through. But also the supportive nature of the arts right now, like I said earlier, with, it wasn't like this necessarily when we were training. I think has led to this sort of organic build of relationships forming and staff taking the art seriously, at least within my context. I obviously can't speak for other teachers in other schools, but I think that's how it has been here, is that, to some extent, we've worked incredibly hard to make sure that we're indispensable and that our subjects are valid, but also organically the relationships that have formed as a result of the subjects that we teach, you can't replace them or try and replicate them elsewhere.
Obviously, I mean, and it's so obvious to say the word obviously, but because I'm a creative, I write music, I am a music teacher, work in a music school, these things seem obvious to me, but it's clear that they're not obvious to other people. And I would encourage those people to find the theatre kids, find the music teachers and the music students, and ask them, where did you go at lunchtime? Where did you go and hide? Where was your sanctuary? And for me, when I was at school, it was the music department. And my music teacher, Andrew Biggs, my English teacher, Sandra Bentley, was hugely formative. But my music teacher, Andrew Biggs, he'd set up a choral society, and we used to tour Europe, which is mad. We sung at the Passionspieler stage. We sung in cathedrals around Austria and Germany and had really enriching experiences, but that came from a place of hiding, a place of security, needing somewhere to rest from the challenges that school brought me personally. And to think that in some schools and some settings, no fault of anybody's, perhaps other than the policymakers, which we'll come on to in a second, that these spaces are potentially being taken away. Regarding your setting, and we were talking about how disadvantaged young people are, those pupil premium and etc., those terrible words that we associate with a genuine group of people in need. What can you envisage their daily life would be like if they didn't have the drama studio to go to come and have a chat? Where would they end up in school, and what would they end up doing?
I don't really want to envisage it, because I think it's such a sad thing to think about. But our areas, you work pretty much around the corner from where I work, Chris. It's rife with gang culture and knife crime, and without a safe place for these children to express themselves, I don't necessarily want to think about what their outcomes might look like otherwise, because they need an outlet and they need a place to safely express themselves without feeling judged. Otherwise, they do fall into, the hands of the wrong sort of.
So for argument's sake, and once again, playing a bit of a devil's advocate here, you can see online a discourse that grows around arts and art staff being woolly and a bit floopy and a bit lovey-dovey and a bit having maybe a saviour complex. Without me, my children would fall apart. Without me, their existence wouldn't be anything. I think they'd be in danger if I wasn't around. How can we combat that attitude that we get from people, as some people who believe that the arts aren't worth the strength that we're putting into the arts? How do you combat that very negative stereotype?
It's not without me that they wouldn't be rescued. It's not without you. It's without the subject and the culture. I just think that I wrote down something earlier, and I want to say it now, just so that I'm not misquoting myself. But the arts bring people of all cultures together to gain a greater understanding of who they are and where they belong in this world. It's not just our children who need the arts. Adults need the arts. Everybody needs the arts. Without the arts, that really naff quote, without art, the earth is just earth. And
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you know what? It is a bit of a naff quote, but actually, it's true. What would you do on your days without listening to music or watching the television or reading a story? Art has been around longer, really, than writing has. They were performing their stories to one another so they could be passed on, or drawing their stories for one another so that they could be passed on. The arts have always existed. The arts have always been integral to who we are as a civilization. And the fact that now we're trying to eradicate that education from students is just so perplexing to me. And it might be because I'm an arts teacher and I don't understand, but also it has been here forever. So
but
why
it's also,
we try and eradicate it? Sorry,
yeah,
Chris.
it is borne out in the fact that one of your jobs is teaching GCSE drama from a theatre, because schools aren't teaching it anymore. We discover that with GCSE music. Sometimes in schools it's an after-school club because they don't have the training or the uptake, and maybe that's because it isn't being advertised as well, or it's got a poor reputation. Some really, really interesting points there, Joe. Just before we wrap up and have a bit of a concluding conversation and look to the future, we're going to have a listen to our sponsors and our partners here at Teachers Talk Radio.
I've always considered myself to be a caring head teacher who acts sensitively to support staff mental health. But what I found increasingly difficult was managing the negative impact on staff mental health when resolving issues related to their employment or daily work. Heartfelt Leadership has been developed by Teachwell Toolkit as a handbook to support head teachers to overcome the challenges of school improvement while supporting staff wellbeing. We know that difficult conversations can quickly turn into conflict if procedures are not fully transparent, understood and followed. Our handbook takes you through step-by-step processes while maintaining mutual respect, avoiding conflict and finding solutions.
At Bloomsbury Education, we're passionate about supporting teachers with high-quality professional development books from leading experts. Whether you're navigating your first crucial years as an early career teacher, or a more experienced teacher looking to refresh your practice or take a step up into leadership, our award-winning books are here to help. We publish practical books to support teaching across primary and secondary, from the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design. Visit the Bloomsbury Education website at bloomsbury.com/education to find out more, and use code BLOOMTTR24 to save 20% on all education titles. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
This is the Lunchtime Show with me, Chris Passey, here on Teachers Talk Radio. I hope you're enjoying the sun. I was before coming and joining you this afternoon, so I do hope at some point before the summer ends tomorrow that you do get a bit of sunshine and you do get a bit of relaxation, and that you enjoyed my earlier feature of pupil voice. So if you do have any funny stories or anecdotes of young people saying the funniest things, make sure you ping them over to me on Twitter. I don't call it that other name. It doesn't exist. I don't believe in it. So over on Twitter at Mr. Chris Passey, and maybe it'll get chosen, and people can revel in that humour. I've got with me Joe Tompkins. Joe is a brilliant drama teacher, a human being, and all-round advocate for the arts. Joe, we've spent all of our time discussing how important it is, and I just asked you a question around the bad reputation that drama teachers can potentially have, and arts teachers of maybe having a bit of a saviour complex. And you span that right round on me and said that it wasn't you that was important; it was the subject. And I thought that was an excellent point, well made. Even though you use the "without art, the earth is just quote, which actually probably works better written down, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Thank you for bringing that moment of embarrassment back up for me, Chris Passey. Thank you so much.
Listen, you are so welcome, and it'll live on forever when this is a podcast. Right, some closing thoughts now, Joe, on a subject that we could talk about for hours. What role can policymakers and community leaders play in promoting and supporting the arts in schools, especially in under-resourced areas? And we're talking here now above our head teachers and above our governing bodies, beyond strategic and operational. What do we need from the top, from the people that are in charge of shaping the way our educational landscape is moving? And perhaps we're speaking to Bridget Phillipson, the potential incoming Education Secretary. They were talking today about a potential Labour government and what the curriculum may look like under them. And people are rightly panicking about what another shift from the 2014 change in the curriculum. What needs to be said to them loudly and clearly about the arts in education?
If you truly care about the children in this country, and you truly want children who are critical, creative thinkers, who understand the world around them, can positively impact the people that they meet, you need to fund arts education appropriately. I was talking to one of our PGC providers earlier, and he said that arts trainee teachers, the numbers of arts trainee teachers are at an all-time low. They're at their lowest numbers. There are no bursaries if you want to be an arts teacher. There are no jobs if you want to be an arts teacher, because the arts are not being recognised as a subject which is valid in school environments. I hope that if you've listened to this podcast, you can hear just how important they are to children in their social development, in their academic development, in their development as people. That it is wild to me that you would not fund a set of subjects appropriately to build a better future for this country. We need money for trips. We need money for lights. We need money for teachers who want to teach these subjects. We need GCSE drama in schools. We need Key Stage 3 dance put back on that curriculum. We need drama to have its own national curriculum space. We are lacking resources, we are lacking knowledge, we are lacking funding in order to make the arts thrive. And as arts teachers, we are struggling, and we are trying so hard to make this work because we understand how necessary this is for our young people. But we need your help now. We really, really do.
A completely impassioned plea. I think arts education is valued by a lot of people, but they maybe don't have the power, which is I think where that question was coming from, Joe, because a lot of people, I can't see them disagreeing with you. There will be, of course, a tranche of really hard-working teachers out there who will be saying, I don't have the time to allow students to miss my lessons for drama rehearsals. We've got a lot of curriculum to get through. The linear examination is incoming. They've got to have 3 books in their head. I've got experiments and field trips. I've got core content to get through in not a lot of time. But I don't believe any of those teachers would turn around and disagree that arts are not important. But we are faced with some choices, and very often the choice that is made is for the arts to become either subsumed into another area, or it gets placed into other subjects or into extracurricular, after-school clubs. Looking ahead, what do you envisage for the future of the arts? Let's do this on a 2-pronged. Let's do some timey-wimey stuff. Let's talk about, if we continue the way we're going, what's the future of the arts in education?
If we continue the way that we're going, I truly don't think that my job exists in the next 5 years. I don't think that drama exists in schools. I don't think that the gap for cultural capital is shrinking or being bridged at all. I think that we're letting down a lot of our pupil premium and SEND learners by not giving them the chance to practically explore and develop their understanding of the world around them, but also the subjects in school that they have to sit down and write for. They can't practically explore those, then they don't fully grasp them. And that's really important to remember. Music education also is so important, as we know. But 15 years down the line, if we keep going the way that we're going, we're looking at the lack of music education too. It's so heartbreaking to think about a world where children don't get the opportunity to learn in this way. And I don't think it's people on ground level. I need to make that really clear. I don't think it's head teachers. I don't think it's other staff in the schools. This stems from people way above us in the education sector, and I really think that a big shift needs to be made in the amount of content that other subjects have to learn as well and have to fit in with the national curriculum. That's unsustainable. If we think about knowledge and retention, think about the amount of history content that there is, thinking about the amount of English content that there is. We need to think about the children and how much they can remember and take in feasibly and fully understand and grasp. We really need to look at the curriculum as a whole. There needs to be a big shift for everybody's well-being, not just for the arts now, for everybody's well-being.
Well, just a couple of points there. This week we've seen the Arts Council reveal their funding for music hubs, which when I worked for a local authority music service, everyone had individual music services. Then hubs came about, and now the hubs are getting even bigger. So now cities are being subsumed into hubs. So there are fewer hubs that have control over even less money. It looks like good news, and the funding is coming, but it's being stretched over far more than it ever has been. And let's not forget Fatima, and Fatima's next job could be cyber. If you remember that, the Cyber First, you do, yeah, the National Cybersecurity Centre, the government put that, I think it was in 2020, so it was during the lockdown. That poor ballerina sat there. Fatima's next job could be in cyber. She just doesn't know it yet. And the outcry was huge, particularly because people spent most of lockdown consuming the arts, listening to music, watching films. People that were filming the news for us so we could watch it had been trained in the arts. They would have been journalists and creative subjects like that. And so it was a real kick in the teeth, wasn't it, at the moment, as artists and art teachers, to see our livelihood, and for some of us, our purpose so degraded. and also kind of reducing the importance of people who work in cyber, because they're just as important as well. So I think you're completely right that those higher than any of us can reach need to listen. But do we have a loud enough voice, Joe? That's the question.
Conversations like this are really important to ensure that our voices are louder and our voices are heard. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me, because it's the only way that people who don't necessarily understand arts education are going to.
Well, absolutely, and big thanks to Teachers Talk Radio as well, because platforms like this, reaching as many people as we can in the podcast form as well, will just ensure that maybe one day this conversation is taken seriously. And as you were saying, we were doing some timey-wimey stuff. We were saying potentially in 5 years' time, the educational landscape, if we continue this way, may look completely different, and you may not have a job. Let's end on a positive. What needs to change? And if that does get changed, what does the future look like for arts education?
We need curriculum time that actually exists, and that schools aren't having to shoehorn in for the sake of it without detrimentally impacting other subjects as well. There needs to be a real shift in the curriculum building and the curriculum writing, and the people that are writing these curriculums for subjects, all subjects, not just the arts, need to be subject specialists within them. It can't just be a tick list of things that they think needs to be included within them. We need, I've said this already, but funding. We need resources. We need incentives for people to want to train to teach in our subject. There needs to be a wider culture shift about you don't have to retrain to be in cyber, Fatima. Being a ballerina that you've worked your whole life to be is more than enough. And we respect that. And we understand the work that went into it. And we appreciate that, the resilience that must have taken. If that changes, if all of that happens, our children are going to be so fulfilled in what they do. And even if they don't take a career within the arts, a sector which continues to bloom in adversity, then they will be so much more resilient, so much more empathetic, so much better at talking to people, so much better at working with people they might not necessarily have worked with otherwise, and better humans as a result.
Joe, I think that is the perfect sentence to end our chat. Thank you so much for coming on to my debut show here at Teachers Talk Radio, and for giving us such an impassioned piece of advocacy for arts education. Listeners, thank you so much for joining me today on this brilliant Saturday, the Saturday Lunch Show with me, Chris Passey. Coming up later today is the Saturday Twilight Show with Graham Stanley, so please tune in for that. Thank you for joining me live on Podbean, and eventually when you get this as a podcast. I will see you all next week for more interesting chats, more guests, and more lunchtime fun here on Teachers Talk Radio. Until next time, see you soon.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.